Out of Order was my attempt at making a retro FPS inspired by Duke Nukem 3D and Strife. I originally created it for the So Bad It's Good game jam back in September of 2019, and somehow it actually ended up winning. This was the first game I had ever released publicly, so I was actually incredibly happy with that fact, and even to this day it actually remains to be one of the most popular games on my profile. I had participated in game jams before this one, but none of those projects ever really saw the light of day because I got way too ambitious with them. Though I learned a lot from all those projects, they never ended up being anything more than just a loose collection of mechanics and assorted models. Since Out of Order is the first game I've publicly released, I thought it would be fun to go and take a look back at it. But I know I didn't want to do another written postmortem because I've gotten kind of burned out on those for the time being. So grab a snack, some orange juice, and try not to reach the screen because here we go. And now we get to watch the beautiful opening cutscene I made. 2021, the world is in chaos. Fuck, I forgot I added that part in. Oh, the Pushers and Pimps line is actually a reference to the movie Blood Debts.
Recruit more pimps, more pushers.
I still love how stupid that transition is.
Malone, Malone, if you would just... Malone, stop kicking that thing. It's out of order.
Sorry, Chief. I just wanted some purple slurp. The best pop that can make you burp.
Listen, Frank, you're out of control. Every time I send you to a crime scene, I end up with innocent civilians in my morgue.
They weren't all innocent, Chief. That old lady deserved it. She was reaching for an improvised explosive device. I could hear the beeping.
That was her life alert, you idiot!
If she was innocent, she wouldn't need to call for help.
You shattered her spine when you pushed her out of the way.
Nothing gets in the way of justice.
Damn it, Malone. You're out of line.
No, Chief. I'm just out of order.
God, that's so stupid. Oh. Yeah. Main menu where we're greeted by the lovely music of Kevin MacLeod. As you can see, my menu UI skills were almost non-existent. I mean, at least the things that are buttons clearly look like buttons, and there's actually an option to quit. But yeah, if you're familiar at all with game jam games, we had a very tight deadline, so if you get any control lists at all, they're usually either listed on the game's page itself, or you get stuff like this just listed in the menu. There is no tutorial. But let's hop right into it. And we're in this lovely... we're in our lovely first level. And that actually is our first enemy. I think he's projectile based. Oh, yep, he is. So, the enemies are projectile, but the player is not. God, I forgot they said my face when they get shot. But yeah, so as you can see, the enemies in the game are all just 2D sprites, like they are in retro FPS stuff. And you'll also notice the sound effects for the pistol. That's literally just a recording of my airsoft gun. I wanted to sound as terrible as possible, and I found that dry firing the airsoft gun I had just sounded so rinky-dink and crappy that it was perfect. Oh, and another thing I wanted to show off is on the game's page it mentions the ability to fight or sneak your way through the game. Well, I mean, the stealth system is almost non-existent, but there is a stealth mode. If you crouch, you can see at the top says stealth mode engaged. And all this really does is just take every enemy's view distance and cut it in half. So he should be able to see me now. Oh, no. Guess I was stealthier than thought. But now he definitely does. If I recall, when the first release of this game came out for the Game Jam, there wasn't death sprites. Like once you shot and killed an enemy, they just disappeared. So we can pick up some armor pieces, which are literally just pieces of Malone's body that have been repurposed. Oh, and I should say the reason he's named Frank Malone is because it's a reference to Sylvester Stallone's lesser-known younger brother Frank Stallone, who was made fun of a lot in jokes made by comedian Norm Macdonald.
In economic news, unemployment figures rose slightly for the month of October, with declines in the Dow Jones and NASDAQ. The reason for the sudden downturn? You guessed it, Frank Stallone.
Oh. And here we see two more enemies who look like they were fighting for a patrol point, but now have turned their attention to me. And here we can see the a basically toned down version of the vending machine scene in the opening cutscene. If I recall, I think just this front facing part is literally just a screenshot of the model pasted onto a side of a cube. I don't think there's anything else on the rest of it at all. And unfortunately, it's not... Oh, you can hear Malone's voice when he interacts with stuff, though. Lovely. And we have one of the few interactions in the game where you can press buttons like this, which can do various things, but in this case, it just raises this platform. But here we have our next enemy who... As I mentioned previously, the other two enemies fighting for a patrol point, these two are trying to reach the same patrol point on this level, but because the nav mesh agent was set to have a distance of 0, they will only actually reach their destination once they're directly on it. But since these two are currently in the way of each other, they will never reach that position, so they'll basically just stay stuck like this for effectively forever. But let's, wow, got a health pack, if I can get it. I really did a terrible job at getting these things to rotate properly. And here we see some shotgun shells, and here we have the shotgun. God, some of these, I tried to take the, like, in-game quotes from Duke Nukem and make my own version of them. So the one you heard there was, "Having fun isn't hard when you have a library card," which is a reference to the PBS series Arthur.
Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. Who's doing?
And I think the reason that quote was originally there is because I was initially going to have a level based in a library where you have to return the chief's overdue books. But, yeah, I didn't have time to implement that. So let's put these two out of their misery. Yeah, I forgot how tanky they were. But here we can see what is probably the most detailed part of the actual level itself. This was just a horribly botched model that I made in Blender and then attempted to texture basically just in Unity. So you can see how cursed the texturing work is. It's there's a lot of issues going on across all here. It's kind of hard to think of them all now. But we can jump over here and get our third weapon. Yeah, rapid progression. So here we have...
This does put a smile on my face.
Here we have the chain gun. And something you can notice with the way the weapons are held is that the pistol, the fists, and the shotgun are all held like right in front of the player, almost like Doom. But the chain gun is held slightly out to the side, more like the Ripper from Duke Nukem. That's effectively just part of how horribly mishmashy I wanted to make the game look, so that part was intentional. Plus, I think the shotgun looks better like this than off to the side. But we jump down here, we can see this random button that appears to have no purpose, but if we press it, it'll open a door later that'll allow us to get a really powerful weapon. But, so that door down there is locked, and though you can't see the text, it says a red key card required. And in order to find the red key card, our only other option is to look in this club, which you can tell is a strip club because it says girls in a pink font, and it's got a pink door, so, well, there's got to be some ladies in here, and oh god. Oh no. Oh god, I forgot how cursed this was. Oh wait, I have a machine gun. And here we have the rocket launcher. So this is the weapon that was unlocked by opening the door that was here, by pressing that button outside. So now let's see what it can do to a group of enemies. Oh god. So yeah, you know I mentioned before how enemies would fight for a same position? Well, it turns out I neglected to turn off the navigation agents on enemy AI when they died. So not only will you see stuff like this, but you'll straight up see corpses moving across the floor after they're dead. It looks stupendously great. Oh, another enemy. If you haven't been able to tell already, the AI is not that great. Oh god, I forgot that I actually individually modeled 4 different directions of multiple frames for each of the 2 strippers. Which... fucking hell, I don't even want to look at that, but... yeah, those models are effectively just the male base models used for Malone, Chief, and the male enemies, but I literally just extruded the vertices on the butt and the boobs, so... oh, what the... oh god, I even forgot how bad that was. So we unlock that, open this door, and we can see more enemies over there appear to be fighting for patrol points. So, help them out a bit. There. God, it looks so stupid. Everything about this is just... god, it's a mess. Oh, actually, here's a great example of reuse of assets in this game. So, you can see that concrete blockage out in the street that blocked our progress earlier. It's the exact same model scaled down here. But I think on the tables here, this was meant to be like cocaine or something. Like, because they were drug dealers and such. But it just looks... But let's do a bit of first-person platforming up here to try and get some extra ammo. And here you'll see the... oh, fuck's sakes. Leave me alone. But up here, you can see the other type of armor pickup, which gives us 100 armor. Which will be quite helpful, because as armor works in this game is basically... when you're damaged, it runs through all the armor first and then starts detracting from health. So it's not a case where it's like if you have armor it takes half damage. No, it just fully negates it. And another neat little feature I added in is that buttons can actually be toggled by attacks. So rather than having to go up that platform and run across that end to open this next door, we can just shoot it from here. Yeah, now isn't that convenient? Very nice. And here we have... oh, and of course he has the same issue. So that right there is the final boss of the game. The drug lord. You can't see the front of him now because he's busy glitching out, but as you can see he carries the chain gun like the player model has. And it's basically just a really scaled up same base mesh as the other enemies in the game. But to give you a fair fight and show you what he can do, let's just aggro him Then he should turn. Oh, and as you can see, he fires off multiple bullets in a rapid succession, just to make him a bit extra dangerous. I wanted there to be something of like a difficulty progression in the game, so you go from the pistol enemy to the shotgun enemy, and then finally this guy is the final boss, which, if he does hit you, can grind you down quite quickly, but as you can see, dodging his projectiles is pretty much no problem. So let's just use a rocket launcher, quickly grind him down. As you can see, the rocket launcher is based off the one from Duke Nukem 3D, and that actually has the smoke trail behind it. And it has the similar weapon placement. Now the question is, will he glitch out, or will we actually see the death animation when he finally dies? Oh, not dead yet. And looks like he glitched out. Did he? Yep. God. There's just so many weird things with this game, but yeah. Drug lord falls to the floor. Frank Malone empties left his bullets into him. And then he snorts all the drugs. Oh, and the credits. Yeah, and classic B-movie egotistical fashion, I listed out all the individual roles and just assigned myself to all of them. It's mostly based off, if anyone's ever seen a Neil Breen film, not only does he do the same thing where he lists himself multiple times rather than just once, but there are cases where he will actually add credits for a role, but then will just list it as being done by none, like nobody did it. So it's... ugh. As you can see, I made quite a lot of use out of Kevin MacLeod's music. I mean, I think that's sort of standard of indie games, and I mean, I still do it till my most recent projects, but yeah, it very much gives it that cheap feeling that I like. So yeah, that was out of order. Coming back to it, it was a bit funnier than I remember it being, actually. The opening cutscene especially, I think, perfectly set the tone for how stupid the game was going to be. This being my first released game, it still holds a very special place in my heart. As I said before, I've had, you know, like a dozen other game projects that never got anywhere near to completion, so having something finished was, you know, a great relief to me at the time. It's also an interesting preview of how I would Frankenstein together features from games that inspired me. So like you had the half-baked stealth system of Strife, combined with the cheesy one-liners of Duke Nukem 3D or other build engine games, and then mix that in with the crappy pre-rendered 3D cutscenes, so you have the audio and video quality just crushed. I think it all came together really nicely, and of the games I've released so far, I think it's the most complete experience. Like, you have a quick cutscene to establish the tone of the game and the characters and the setting, and then you basically can start the game almost immediately after that. And just by leaning on this sort of 90s FPS angle, you really don't have to do much to introduce the player to what the game is all about. So on that front, I got very lucky with the theme of the So Bad It's Good jam. So overall, what went well? I think the opening cutscene really effectively established the tone the game was going for. I mean, it encapsulates all the stupidity and bravado of Frank Malone, and the chief is basically every 80s cop movie police chief in history. The opening cutscene received positive feedback from basically anyone I had seen play it, and to this day I still think it's the best opening cutscene any of my games have had. I think just the overall visual style for the game was great for a So Bad It's Good game. Like the horribly cut out 2D sprites mixed with the crappy paint texturing and just the very awkward animations on crappy 3D models. It all just really came together for this abomination of an art style. From a behind the scenes perspective, this was also a great basis for me to start thinking about some longer term, more modular ideas I had. So having enemies actually having to see the player rather than just charge out at them, and then have their, regular patrol cycles, being able to chase and search for the player, and if they can't find them, just go back to what they were doing. That would come back into play with Submortis, which had an actual stealth system, and the modular implementation of the weapons. So basically, every weapon in the game the player can use is basically derived from a single script, but I was able to make new weapons just by changing some variables in the inspector, so that was really cool to be able to quickly iterate on that. You can see a similar sort of thinking in my later projects, especially Stale Water, where both the player and the enemies were using the same item values for their weapons. And this last point is probably the most important. It's that I actually had completed a game. There are games that I've worked on for longer than Out of Order, and I think possibly some canceled projects that were maybe more impressive than Out of Order, but I never completed any of those. So there was some stuff that I never did with those games that I had to learn for the first time with Out of Order. Like making sure all the menus work, making sure the game is packaged up correctly, making sure it's uploaded properly to itch.io, and actually trying to remove some of the bugs towards the end. Things that I never had to consider with previous canceled projects, I suddenly had to deal with. And so learning those lessons made releasing my later projects much easier. And frankly, just the feeling of having other people give positive feedback to a game that you've released is an awesome feeling. Hell, even getting the negative feedback was quite a thrill because other people had actually bothered to try a game I made. Though, make no mistake, there was quite a number of issues. Specifically, the AI was absolutely terrible. I mean, you saw how it would get stuck on competing for patrol points, it would have a hard time even shooting at the player, and it was also pretty inefficient performance-wise. In fact, if you were to look very closely, you'd notice that the frame rate gets higher as more enemies die. The combat was also incredibly bland, especially when it was first released. I mean, there was no real hit indicators when it launched, the enemy bodies would just vanish, and since the player did not shoot out projectiles, it was very hard to get any form of feedback, so you didn't even know if you were doing any damage at all. It was just not very fun. There was also a horrible bug where if the player switched weapons while they were firing a weapon, the weapon would be stuck in the attacking state or reloading state, so you would never be able to exit that state and fire the weapon again. So you basically be unable to attack at all. And I know one player had this happen to them so much so that they basically had to save all of their ammo until the end, and they only had one weapon working when they had to fight the boss. So that was a pretty major issue, even if I was able to patch it out later. And actually, I was working on a sequel to Out of Order for many months after its release. Of course, it's never been finished, but I did implement several of the features that I wanted in the sequel. There was exploding barrels, an actual working vending machine, rudimentary physics, lighting for the player and enemy sprites, and I even had a working elevator. I'm still quite happy actually with how some of these features turned out. It's just that I unfortunately did not learn how to scale down the scope of my plans at that point. I was actually able to reference Out of Order again in my last project, Stale Water, but that was only in a very minuscule way that didn't involve much effort. But I do have plans to return to Out of Order in the near future, so we'll see how that goes. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. This is kind of a experimental format, so if people like it, maybe I'll do more. If not, eh.